Lin Chia's gaze focused, his form transforming into a shade of night, rapidly flashing through space as he retreated. Almost at the same moment he moved, number 22 raised the scepter in his hand and struck the ground again. Clang! Golden ripples spread rapidly, expanding outward, closing in on that continuously retreating shade of night. Lin Chia understood clearly the power of that scepter. Once affected by the golden ripples, his spirit would be forcibly requisitioned. At that point, with number 22 gaining double spiritual power and wielding both the scepter and the Holy Grail, Lin Chia as an ordinary person would have virtually no chance of winning. Fortunately, Lin Chia moved in time, and with the distance of night flash being long enough, he barely avoided the range of the scepter's requisition, landing on ruins a kilometer away. Seeing that Lin Chia had actually avoided this strike, surprise appeared in number 22's eyes. He initially wanted to directly use the power of the Holy Grail to make a wish, but after a moment's hesitation he abandoned the idea. His figure flickered as he rapidly pursued Lin Chia. Two streaks of light crossed the sky above Wu City, beginning a heart-stopping chase. In terms of speed, if Lin Chia used Somersault Cloud, he could shake off number 22 in minutes, but once he did so, that pair of boots, the silver bird and the spear would immediately come after him. With the scepter in hand, number 22 wasn't afraid of these three divine artifacts hunting him, but if Lin Chia were caught he would find himself surrounded and attacked. Lin Chia pushed Night Flash to its limit while looking back at the pursuing number 22, his mind racing. As he had expected, although number 22 held both the scepter and the Holy Grail, two supreme artifacts, the former required a certain casting range and the latter needed life as sacrifice. Unless absolutely necessary, number 22 probably wouldn't want to use the Holy Grail to make wishes. This meant that as long as Lin Chia maintained a certain distance, the threat number 22 could pose was actually quite limited. Lin Chia's feet tapped in succession and magical light bloomed from the ground. Several figures were summoned, hovering behind him. The Snow Woman waved her hand and countless ice crystals condensed from nothingness, transforming into a vast storm of ice swords that surged toward number 22 who was pursuing from behind. Number 22 frowned slightly, his form quickly twisting as he nimbly navigated through the sky full of ice swords. Looking at the floating figures in the distance, he spoke in confusion. Is that summoning magic? Isn't he only the proxy for the night goddess and the seraph? How does he actually know magic? Just as number 22 was puzzled, a faint woman's voice drifted into his ears. Planchette, Planchette, you are my past life, I am your present existence. The moment he heard this voice, the ice swords stuck in the ground around him all stood upright, like pen holders gripped by invisible hands, quickly sketching concentric circles in the sand. As the circles connected end to end, a woman in a blood-stained white dress appeared ghost-like at number 22's side, her pale hand like lightning, reaching directly for the king's scepter in his hand. What kind of ghost thing is this? Number 22's eyes narrowed and he instinctively stepped back halfway. Two ice swords grazed his skin, leaving bloody marks on his shoulder and knee. Ignoring his injuries, he abruptly raised the Holy Grail in his hand. I wish evil spirits be gone. As the words fell, a faint light flashed across the surface of the Holy Grail. The Snow Woman and the Planchette both shuddered simultaneously and flew backward like kites with cut strings. Two flashes of magical light, and their forms were sent back to the god's psychiatric hospital. Lin Chia's eyes narrowed slightly. The joint attack of the Snow Woman and the Planchette had failed, but it didn't matter. At least they had consumed one of number 22's wishes. There was no life in this desert to replenish energy, and if this continued, the Holy Grail's power would eventually be depleted. At that point, this supreme artifact would be completely useless. Just as Lin Chia was about to make his move, a third streak of light flashed across the sky, rapidly approaching. He and number 22 were both startled and turned to look in that direction. A white-hot fireball fell from the sky, crashing heavily onto the desert, kicking up wild sand. A figure holding a long sword slowly walked out from the divine white light. The face was somewhat unfamiliar to Lin Chia, but the person wore a black cloak covered in sword marks, and on the wide brim of the hood, the numbers 38 could be faintly seen. Was this the only one who escaped from the old city lord's hands among those proxies who invaded Wu City? Lin Chia immediately recalled the person's identity. At that time in Wu City's central square, only this number 38 had not been controlled by the scepter, and even without spiritual power he had still escaped the old city lord's pursuit. The second of the 10 imperial guards, Bifitu? Number 22 was even more surprised than Lin Chia upon seeing the person. You're actually still alive? Bifitu's gaze fell on the scepter, in number 22's palm, his eyes narrowing. I was planning to come back and kill that old man, but it seems there's no need for that anymore. The king's sword. Number 22 also noticed the long sword in Bifitu's hand, his eyes gleaming. It seems your fortune has been good as well. Bifitu didn't speak. He just silently glanced at Lin Chia, his expression somewhat puzzled. Who are you? He is number 33 Myers and also the dual god proxy we've been looking for. Lin Chia, number 22 said in a highly enticing tone. Bifitu, let's join forces to capture this dual god proxy from Great Xia. Afterward we'll split the secrets we obtain. What do you say? Dual god proxy? Bifitu raised an eyebrow, looking at Lin Chia with curiosity. Lin Chia's heart tightened. Although he didn't know Bifitu's background, if Lin Chia wasn't mistaken, he was one of the 2 monsters of the 10 imperial guards, mentioned by Prakash. Being able to escape while under the power of the scepter, his own strength must be extraordinary. Moreover, he held a king's sword, capable of slaying gods. If Bifitu really joined forces with number 22, the situation would be dire. Lin Chia took a deep breath and said to Bifitu, the Holy Grail, in his hand can erase the divine mark in your body. Let's kill him together. The Holy Grail will be yours and that scepter will be mine. Divine mark. Bifitu shook his head. That thing, I've already removed it myself. He pulled down his collar, revealing a hideous blood-red wound on the left chest of his body, which resembled a stitched-together monstrosity. From the appearance of the wound, it seemed he had cut it open himself with the king's sword. Deep in his left chest, a shattered heart was split open, completely devoid of life. And in his right chest, a divine heart like a white-hot sun, was beating slowly but steadily. Egyptian sun god. Below the ancient well of Wu City, 3 stone statues witnessed this scene, their bodies trembling simultaneously, small stones sliding off with rustling sounds, their expressions filled with astonishment. There's no mistake, that is Ra's heart. What's going on? How does he possess the heart of Ra, Egypt's supreme god? Not just the heart, his right arm, left leg and spine were all transplanted from Ra's body. Look carefully, you can see these areas are charred, likely damaged by the essence of some divine realm. Does this mean Ra is dead? That's the only possibility. The left statue paused. We fled into this treasury to escape the mist, but in just 100 years, a supreme god has died in the outside world. It's possible the entire Egyptian pantheon has disappeared. What exactly happened in the outside world during these 100 years? While the 2 statues on the left and right conversed, the central statue stared intently at Bifitu's pulsating, burning heart, its gaze growing increasingly fervent. Only a Klein level and divine ruin, yet possessing the supreme god Ra's heart and body. If we could use him as a sacrifice, we could not only control this treasury but even return to divine status through the power of the Holy Grail. This is the perfect sacrifice delivered right to our doorstep. Whether we can restore Sumerian glory depends on this opportunity. At the bottom of the ancient well, these 3 stone statues, who had been sitting cross-legged for an unknown length of time, slowly rose. Dense fragments of stone and dust swirled in the well, and as the stone skin cracked and fell away, these 3 figures at the dim bottom of the well straightened their backs after a long absence. That is. In the desert, Lin Chia stared at the incandescent heart beating in Bifitu's right chest, frozen in place. That is the heart of Ra, the supreme god of the Egyptian pantheon. Though only a fragment, number 22 said, narrowing his eyes. Not long ago, after the gods of Great Xia destroyed the Egyptian sun city and killed the sun god Ra, during the chaos, half of Ra's corpse was secretly stolen, and the thief was none other than his proxy, Bifitu. The laws of the sun god Ra were divided among deities of other divine realms, but parts of his body were transplanted by Bifitu onto himself, who also possessed the sun god's divine ruin. It is precisely because of this half-divine body that Bifatu leaped from 6th place among the 10 imperial guards to 2nd, possessing power comparable to a deity despite being at the Klein level. Number 22 paused briefly, licked his lips and muttered, "Truly a perfect sacrifice. Transplanting the body of your deity after they die?" Lin Chia looked at Bifatu, who resembled a stitched-together monster, his brow furrowing deeper. No wonder Bifatu could escape from the old city lord's grasp after having his spiritual power level drained by the scepter. Even with just this divine body, he possessed terrifyingly powerful combat abilities. Bifatu's gaze swept over Lin Chia and the 2 divine artifacts in number 22's hands before he spoke calmly. "I'll take both the secret of the dual divine proxy and the supreme artifacts." Boom. Bifatu stomped the ground fiercely. White-hot divine sunlight erupted from his left foot, instantly vaporizing the desert below, and his entire body moved at a speed approaching teleportation, flashing before Lin Chia. He moved too fast, even Lin Chia's spiritual perception couldn't track him in time. Without a moment to think, Lin Chia's form dissolved into night shadows, flashing backward. At that moment, Bifatu raised his right arm, radiating white-hot divine light, clenched his fist tightly, and smashed it toward the void before him. The dazzling white light was like the sun at close range, unbearably bright. The surrounding space seemed to melt and rapidly distort. The powerful compression forced Lin Chia out of his night flash, causing him to stagger backward. That arm could actually interfere with space. Lin Chia's heart immediately sank. The next moment, Bifatu's sun-like right arm shot like a cannonball toward Lin Chia's chest. Clang. Not far away, the tip of the scepter touched the ground and golden ripples instantly swept across both figures. "This is bad." Lin Chia was startled. During their battle, number 22 had seized the opportunity to enter the scepter's range, draining both their spiritual power levels to fill himself. Lin Chia felt his body empty, an unprecedented feeling of hollowness rising from deep within. A golden thread floated out from his body, flying toward number 22 nearby. Of course, Lin Chia wasn't the only one who lost his spiritual power level. After the golden thread left his body, Bifatu's sun-bright right arm rapidly dimmed, with only a faint white light flowing through it. The fist struck Lin Chia's chest, immediately turning him into a black projectile that whistled through the air before crashing into a sand dune behind him. Even without the divine ruin's power, this supreme divine arm was still more than Lin Chia's physical body could withstand. After delivering the punch, Bifatu didn't pursue to finish him off, but instead withdrew his gaze and looked toward number 22. In his understanding, with his spiritual power drained and taking a direct hit from his fist, Lin Chia should be either dead or completely incapacitated with broken bones. This left only number 22, who held 2 divine artifacts, as his opponent. Having absorbed the spiritual power of both Bifatu and Lin Chia, number 22's spiritual power had reached a terrifyingly immense level. Pink halos surged like tides, countless blood-stirring images floated in the air, like invisible jade hands teasing humanity's most primitive desires. Under the wash of the pink waves, Bifatu's brow slightly furrowed, the white-hot heart beating violently, constantly purifying the lustful energy invading his body. "Such base tactics cannot trap me," Bifatu snorted coldly, his form darting forward like lightning. "What a monster!" Number 22 cursed under his breath, rapidly retreating while raising the Holy Grail in his hand and whispering, "I wish for the sword to turn against its master." As the words fell, the swaying liquid in the Holy Grail immediately decreased by a large amount. Number 22 looked at the little remaining wine in the cup, his face full of distress. In a flash, the sword, gripped in Bifatu's hand, suddenly reversed and slashed at the transplanted supreme divine arm. With a resonant boom, the faint light covering the arm's surface shattered like glass, and the entire pale arm visibly began to decay. The king's sword contained laws that could slay deities, and Bifatu's transplanted divine body was precisely the target that the sword could harm. This sudden turn of events made Bifatu's eyes narrow, but before he could react, another explosive sound came from the deep sand pit in the distance. An intangible soul ascended, and in an instant the weather changed dramatically. Winds swept through the yellow sand, howling beneath the thunder clouds. The spiritual energy floating between heaven and earth rapidly converged toward the center of the wind-blown sand, quickly condensing into a colossal figure that reached from earth to sky. That colossal figure wore a deep crimson cloak, standing on starlight with night above its head, looking down at Bifitu and number 22 amidst the swirling sandstorm. Its appearance was identical to Lin Chia's, only with a more solemn and dignified aura. This wasn't the heavenly equal manifestation, drawn from the great sage, nor was it the clear origin manifestation, taught by Yang Jian. This was Lin Chia's own heaven and earth manifestation, created by thoroughly integrating both techniques. Its form was neither a magical ape nor the clear origin wondrous Tao True Lord, but Lin Chia himself. Heaven and earth manifestation was a secret technique mastered by only a few deities in Great Xia. As long as spiritual energy existed, it could be performed without mental power. This was Lin Chia's only and strongest means he could employ when all his mental power had been drained. Is that him? Number 22 frowned upon seeing this scene and asked in confusion. His mental power should have been drained. What ability is this? Bifitu, with one arm severed, also had a grim and solemn expression. At that moment, a vertical eye opened between the brows of Lin Chia's manifestation, releasing a terrifying pressure. Under the gaze of this vertical eye, Bifitu and number 22 felt their bodies freeze, as if invisible hands had gripped them, binding them firmly in place. This was originally a divine ability of the clear origin manifestation, now incorporated into Lin Chia's own manifestation. The towering manifestation flicked its finger, and with howling winds, a long sword streaked across the sky like a rainbow, slashing directly toward number 22's body. Number 22's eyes narrowed. Disregarding everything else, he simultaneously unleashed his triple Klein realm power. Pink energy waves surged through his body, barely breaking free from the vertical eye's binding as he staggered backward. The Amano sword grazed past his heart, slicing through his wrist like a knife through tofu, completely severing one of number 22's hands. With a scream of agony, the king's Holy Grail was carried dozens of meters away by the gale along with the severed palm. Meanwhile, the towering manifestation took a step forward, instantly appearing before Bifitu. Its mountain-sized black arm raised high, carrying earth-shattering power, and smashed down. With one supreme god arm severed by the sword, Bifitu couldn't withstand this attack with strength alone. Unable to use his divine void, he could only grit his teeth and rapidly retreat. Bang! The manifestation's fist struck the desert, sending terrifying sandstorms spiraling into the sky. Bifitu grunted, his body flying back hundreds of meters, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. He slowly stood up, his gaze fixed on the manifestation. He wiped the blood from his mouth, and a white-hot heart in his chest beat frantically, rapidly healing his internal injuries. Only minor injuries even after that. That body is simply cheating. Within the manifestation, Lin Chia's soul muttered. Bifitu's earlier punch had broken several of Lin Chia's ribs and nearly ruptured his internal organs. If his body hadn't been purified by the power of faith and strengthened by the peach of immortality, making it several times stronger than others at the same level, that single punch would have completely shattered him. Although Lin Chia's manifestation's punch had also injured Bifitu significantly, the terrifying recovery power of that heart reduced it to a minor injury within moments. Both were at the Klein realm, and although Lin Chia possessed numerous divine voids and exceptional strength, he was still constrained by his realm. But Bifitu, with a supreme god's torso transplanted into him, was simply a monster with unfair advantages. Lin Chia had no doubt that even a deity, if caught off guard by one of Bifitu's punches, would be left dazed and confused. After the skirmish, Lin Chia, Bifitu, and number 22 stabilized their positions at 3 different locations, warily watching each other with a major battle imminent. Wait, where's the Holy Grail? Number 22 clutched his bleeding wrist, scanning the surroundings, but couldn't find the severed Holy Grail. Lin Chia in his manifestation state narrowed his eyes. With his heightened sensitivity to spiritual energy, he suddenly seemed to sense something and abruptly looked up at the sky. The boundless clear sky visibly darkened, as if someone had draped a black veil over everyone's heads. The sunlight gradually dimmed, and the golden sand was slowly devoured by darkness. Cold winds swept across the desert, like a severe winter midnight, desolate and bleak. A bright crescent moon slowly rose from the edge of the night sky. This wasn't Lin Chia's ability. Is there someone else in this treasury? Lin Chia had an ominous premonition. Before number 22 could finish speaking, the bright crescent moon suddenly rotated eerily in the sky, transforming into a light, solitary boat that created ripples in the night sky as it slowly sailed toward them. Inside the crescent boat stood a hunched old man, ghost-like in appearance. In his left hand he held a bloody severed arm, and floating before him was a dark golden chalice. The Holy Grail? Why arm? Number 22 and Bifitu exclaimed simultaneously. The old man, gripping the severed arm, gazed intently at Bifitu below, as if looking at an extremely rare treasure. A smile curled at the corner of his mouth. Heaven truly hasn't abandoned me, Sumer, to send such a fine sacrifice here. After 100 years of dormancy, it's finally time to reap the rewards. His fingers tightened around the supreme god's arm and squeezed hard. Bang! The arm dissolved into a mist of blood, merging into the Holy Grail. The swirling liquid inside rapidly rose, not only replenishing what number 22 had used for his wish but increasing several times over, almost overflowing from the cup. Not good. Stop him. Lin Chia, seeming to realize something, parted the lips of his manifestation, his voice echoing like thunder in the sky. Number 22 and Bifitu also sensed the danger. Both leaped into the air, charging toward the crescent boat in the sky. Number 22 raised the scepter in his hand, about to activate it, when the void before him suddenly distorted. Black hair like a waterfall extended from the void, enveloping number 22. A delicate, boneless hand emerged from the black hair, gently gripping the upper half of the scepter, instantly stopping its descent. Number 22's pupils contracted. His triple Klein mental power surged as he tried to wrestle with that hand, but no matter how hard he tried, that scepter remained firmly held, not moving an inch. How could this seemingly delicate hand possess such terrifying strength? As number 22 stood shocked, a slender, fair figure walked out from the rolling hair. It was a woman wearing a white robe with a frost-like face. Her left hand firmly gripped the scepter, while her right hand held a long spear. She narrowed her eyes, looking down at number 22, and an unprecedented sense of pressure washed over him. This woman, number 22 seemed to see the shadow of a familiar woman in those beautiful eyes, and terror appeared on his face. A deity. You're a deity. Half suspended in the air, number 22's form was completely engulfed by black hair strands. Lin Chia heard number 22's faint words, "You are a god," and his heart skipped a beat. God? But why wasn't there any divine power emanating from them? And the king's treasury strictly forbids gods from entering, so if they were gods, how did they get in? Before Lin Chia could think further, a blinding light suddenly emerged from the black clouds in the sky. A scorching fireball howled through the air, heading straight for the chest of Lin Chia's manifestation. Another one. Lin Chia's heart tightened as crimson demonic energy dispersed from his eyes. His manifestation's hands transformed into demon ape arms, rushing to meet the fireball. Boom! The force of the law of heaven and earth collided with the raging fireball in midair, and scarlet heat waves instantly swept across the desert sky. All sand within hundreds of meters around the manifestation was blown upward by the impact. Lin Chia's form sank, his manifestation's knees completely buried in the desert. Meanwhile, cracks spread from his knuckles and his form swayed unsteadily. The fireball scattered from the collision's residual force. A man in red armor retreated several steps in the air, his brows slightly furrowed. Lin Chia looked up in surprise when he saw that his manifestation hadn't completely shattered. Something wasn't right. If it had truly been a strike from a major god, his manifestation would have certainly been reduced to dust, and possibly even his soul would have been damaged. Yet not only had he withstood the attack head-on with his manifestation intact, but he had also forced that red-armored major god to retreat several steps. Most crucially, during this brief exchange, Lin Chia hadn't detected even the slightest divine power fluctuation from them. These were no major gods. By all appearances, they were merely humans at the peak of human capability. Lin Chia's mind raced, recalling Lonely Boat Elder's earlier murmurs. A thought flashed through his mind and he spoke with sudden realization. I understand now. You are the forgotten gods of the Sumerian pantheon. Lin Chia had read analyses about the Sumerian pantheon in the Shangxia Society's archives. The Society's researchers believed that after the fall of the kingdom of Uruk, with the passage of time, population migrations, and the impact and integration of new cultures, the ancient Sumerian mythology had gradually disappeared into the river of history. This disappearance wasn't physical but rather a disappearance of faith. Fewer and fewer people believed in the Sumerian pantheon, and with the scarcity of faith power, the Sumerian source gradually withered and the gods' strength declined. Under the conservative survival philosophy of the Sumerian gods, 100 years ago, that world-ending mist suddenly descended. This mist spared none, not even many powerful ancient divine kingdoms. For the already weakened Sumerian gods, it was a devastating blow. Judging from these gods' current state, the Sumerian pantheon of 100 years ago likely met the fate of a shattered source and withered gods. While these few relatively powerful major gods barely survived that catastrophe and somehow found the king's treasury, created by Gilgamesh in ancient times. The king's treasury formed its own space which could isolate the erosion of the mist. The three major gods, having fallen from divine status after losing their pantheon's source, wouldn't be rejected by the treasury. Using some method, they had infiltrated it and hidden beneath Wu City all this time, waiting for an opportunity to rise again. Thinking of this, Lin Chia suddenly turned to look at the lonely boat elder holding the Holy Grail in the crescent boat. "The Holy Grail, making a wish. So that's your purpose?" Lin Chia muttered. Ignoring the red-armored major god blocking him, his unsteady manifestation stood up again and flashed rapidly toward the lonely boat elder. Now that these major gods hadn't recovered their power, they were nothing more than stronger clines. There might still be a chance to snatch the Holy Grail from their hands. Moving alongside Lin Chia was Bifatu, whose body radiated white-hot divine light. The two who had just been fighting to the death now tacitly chose to cooperate under their common survival interest. Like two meteors, one on the left and one on the right, they hauled toward the elder standing on the lonely boat. As the two powerful pressures approached simultaneously, a glimmer of light appeared in the elder's cloudy eyes. His wrinkled mouth curved upward as he elegantly gripped the Holy Grail, gently swirling the accumulated wine inside. Divine power, revive. A dreamlike light flashed across the Holy Grail, and in the next moment, terrifying divine power surged out from the elder's body like boiling water. The divine power that had dried up due to the disappearance of the pantheon's source now flowed endlessly under the effect of the supreme wish-granting device. The elder's eyes gradually brightened like stars in the night sky, and the divine might of a major god descended with a roar. Lin Chia felt his body sink as the powerful pressure nearly knocked him out of the air. Looking up at the figure gliding leisurely on the moon-shaped boat in the night sky, the last flicker of hope in his heart was completely extinguished. These old creatures had hidden in Wu City for so long and only emerged now. They were clearly prepared. If an ordinary person's life force was comparable to a burning ant, then Bifatu was like a walking sun. Even as just a severed arm of a supreme god, sacrificing it could make a major god's dried-up divine power surge again. Streams of spiritual energy flowed out from Lin Chia's manifestation as the duration of law of heaven and earth reached its limit. As spiritual energy poured down from the sky, Lin Chia's soul returned to his body. Severely injured, he staggered out from the sand dune and looked up at the sky. What he had used to attack the lonely boat elder was just a manifestation. After it dissipated, his soul would automatically return to his body, escaping danger. But Bifatu wasn't so lucky. After the elder standing on the lonely boat recovered his divine power, Bifatu came to his senses and immediately turned to flee. But the elder had no intention of letting him leave. A beam of moonlight rapidly extended from the crescent boat beneath his feet, like countless ribbons, wrapping around Bifatu's body with lightning speed. The latter's eyes widened in anger as his white-hot heart beat rapidly, trying to break free from the moonlight. But no matter how hard he struggled, the moonlight showed no signs of breaking. Under the night sky, the frantically roaring Bifatu was like a fish caught on a hook, being forcibly pulled back to the crescent boat bit by bit. "Damn it! Let me go!" Bifatu watched in terror as that face, resembling the Grim Reaper, drew ever closer. Moonlight bound his body, suspending him before the crescent boat. The elder narrowed his eyes, examining his body, his smile growing deeper. Ra's heart. I'll take it. Bang. Under the night sky, an aged hand pierced through the right side of Bifitu's chest like lightning. The flowing black hair scattered. A bloody figure fell from the sky. Number 22 crashed into the yellow sand like a corpse. His bloodied eyes opened with difficulty, looking at the white-robed woman who emerged from the black hair holding the scepter. In his daze, her silhouette overlapped with a certain enchanting goddess in his memory. Number 22 seemed to recall something, endless humiliation filling his chest. His eyes widened in fury, venomous as if about to spit fire. Gods. Gods. Always the gods. These damn gods. Just you wait, as long as I don't die sooner or later, I'll make you all know what it feels like to be dogs. Number 22's curses were drowned in the howling wind. Gritting his teeth, he dug his remaining 5 fingers into the sandy ground, dragging his stiff body like a worm, inching bit by bit away from the battlefield. In the sky, the pink flush gradually faded from the white-robed goddess's cheeks. She licked her bright red lips and turned to look at the crescent-shaped boat. The old man stood under the dim sky, his aged hand holding a white-hot heart, slowly pulling it out from Bifitu's body. Bifitu's eyes widened in rage, his chest heaved twice and soon he stopped breathing. His corpse hung like a dead fish at the front of the crescent boat, drifting in the wind. A perfect sacrifice, the old man remarked appreciatively, holding the beating heart and examining it carefully for a long time. He tossed the heart in his hand, which transformed into countless blood threads and merged into the Holy Grail. The old man didn't stop there. He turned to Bifitu's corpse like a meticulous fisherman, knife in hand, carefully cutting off every piece of the sun god's body and throwing them into the Holy Grail. As the sun god's heart and torso merged in, the crimson liquid swirling inside the cup rose rapidly, almost overflowing, emitting an intoxicating fragrance. After completely dismembering Bifitu, the old man waved his hand, and the incomplete corpse was casually tossed into the desert below like garbage. Is it enough? The white-robed goddess asked softly. It should be about right, the old man replied, glancing at the full liquid in the Holy Grail, as he held it by the base. His gaze swept across this world, the smile on his lips gradually fading, replaced by solemnity and dignity. Standing on the crescent boat he spoke softly. From today the glory of Sumer shall return to the world. He held the Holy Grail with both hands, raising it above his head. The overflowing liquid churned within the cup. The old man took a deep breath and made his first wish. Inanna, goddess of love and war, Jibble, god of fire, let your divine power be restored. As his words fell, the white-robed goddess and the red-armored man standing in the sky felt their dried-up divine power surge again. 2 terrifying auras of major gods erupted in succession. Inanna closed her beautiful eyes, feeling the long-absent fullness within her body, and let out a long breath. 100 years. Finally back. 3 figures stood in the moonlight, the aura of ancient gods descending upon the world again after countless years. Inanna, Jibble. Lin Chia stood in the wild sand in the distance, looking up at the 3 figures in the sky, murmuring. He had seen both names in the archives of the Shangxia Society, major gods of Sumerian mythology. If he wasn't mistaken, the old man standing on the crescent boat in the middle was the moon god Nana. The moon god Nana raised the Holy Grail high, about to say something more when his brow furrowed. What's wrong? Fire god Jibble asked puzzledly. Restoring divine power consumed more than I expected. We still need a bit more sacrifice to complete that wish, Nana said gravely. Jibble paused for a moment, then said, It's fine. Below there's still an agent with extraordinary vitality, and to the east there's a group of fleeing Uruk survivors. Killing them should be enough. Then I'll go kill the survivors and you take care of that agent, said Inanna, goddess of love and war. Jibble turned his head toward Lin Chia's direction, his form transforming into a streak of flame, instantly disappearing. Seeing this flame flying straight toward him, Lin Chia's heart sank, and his form transformed into a streak of darkness, rapidly flying in the opposite direction. After losing the scepter, Lin Chia's mental power level had returned, but even so he couldn't possibly shake off a major god. Damn it! Why chase only me and not that barely dead number 22? Lin Chia cursed inwardly. He had no idea how extraordinarily vibrant his life force appeared to these gods after undergoing faith baptism and consuming the peach. Not just one number 22, even 10 combined wouldn't match him. As the streak of flame passed by, the distance between them visibly shortened. Feeling the surging heat wave from behind, Lin Chia grew increasingly anxious. An unprecedented shadow of death rapidly enveloped his heart. Before Jibble's divine power was restored, Lin Chia could fight him evenly, but now the other could crush him with just one finger. Before a true god, a Klein was no different from an ordinary person. Both were mere ants. In this life-or-death moment, Lin Chia quickly ran through all his trump cards. Soul-bearing Kusanagi sword, summoning thunder beasts. He had many cards, but none could threaten a major god. Suddenly, as if remembering something, Lin Chia took out a star coin, emitting a faint blue light from his bosom. The king's star coin. A spark of hope ignited in Lin Chia's eyes. Being on par with the scepter, holy grail, and sword, the star coin must possess some extremely powerful ability, one that even made the hero King Gilgamesh wary in the past. This might be the only way out now. But how to use it? The introduction to the star coin had been deliberately erased, and Gilgamesh hadn't mentioned how to use it before falling into chaos. The light blue star coin rotated clockwise incessantly in Lin Chia's palm, its shifting light reflecting in his eyes, making him momentarily dazed. As if possessed, he placed that star coin between his thumb and index finger joint and flicked it hard. Ding! A crisp humming sound rang out. The light blue star coin, propelled by his thumb, was tossed high into the dim sky. The polished coin surface clearly reflected Lin Chia's eyes, and the flame streak close behind him, beginning to spin rapidly counterclockwise in the air. Snap! The star coin landed on Lin Chia's hand, but it didn't stop spinning. Instead, it wobbled strangely and continued to rotate counterclockwise. Lin Chia was stunned for a moment. He looked up at the gloomy sky, the vast desert beneath his feet, and the howling flames rushing toward him from behind. No divine miracle descended, no reversal of heaven and earth occurred. Everything remained as it was. That's it. Lin Chia's mouth twitched slightly. He had inexplicably flipped the star coin, and the only result was changing its direction of rotation? Perhaps this thing wasn't meant to be used this way? With Gilgamesh still in a state of confused consciousness, even if Lin Chia wanted to ask about the proper way to use the star coin, he didn't have the opportunity. The last hope in Lin Chia's heart ultimately fell through. There must be another way to escape. The surging waves of flame almost engulfed Lin Chia's figure. In this moment between life and death, his brain worked at lightning speed. That's it. The boots. Where were those winged boots that liked to chase after people? Lin Chia suddenly remembered the divine artifact trio he had encountered twice above the desert. The incredible speed of those boots had left a deep impression on him. If he could grab those boots now, he might have a chance to shake off the fire god behind him. Lin Chia's gaze swept the surroundings. Apart from endless heat waves, nothing else appeared in the airspace for dozens of miles around. The divine artifact trio had probably discovered these three major gods descending and were too frightened to appear. Lin Chia closed his eyes helplessly and let out a long sigh. Just as he was about to despair, he suddenly felt something tighten around his feet, and then his movement speed increased dramatically. Lin Chia was startled and looked down in confusion. A familiar pair of boots had somehow appeared on his feet, their two pairs of wings buzzing and trembling, carrying his body forward at breakneck speed. Just as he was about to be swallowed by the flames, at this critical moment he once again widened the distance between himself and Jibble. How is this possible? Jibble, who had been on the verge of successfully killing Lin Chia, saw this scene with shock on his face. When did those boots appear? The same question also surfaced in Lin Chia's mind. What was going on with these boots? Lin Chia clearly remembered that just a second ago, when his spiritual power had swept the surroundings, there hadn't been even a shadow of these boots. How did they suddenly appear on his feet? This wasn't scientific. A thought struck him and he looked down at that star coin, spinning counterclockwise on the back of his hand. Could it be this thing? Lin Chia muttered. He had just thought about those boots and they suddenly appeared. What if he thought about something else? A bold idea suddenly surged in Lin Chia's mind. He glanced at the Holy Grail, in the moon goddess Nana's hand in the distance, contemplated silently for a moment, and suddenly felt a weight in his left hand as some heavy object appeared in his palm. Lin Chia opened his eyes and indeed, a dark golden goblet had appeared in his palm. The Holy Grail? Jibble's expression changed drastically when he saw this. Lin Chia was astonished to see that he had actually manifested the Holy Grail. He raised his head to look into the distance, and the original Holy Grail still existed in the moon goddess Nana's hand. He immediately examined the inside of this Holy Grail in his hand and found not a drop of crimson wine inside. It didn't meet the conditions for making wishes. The one in his hand wasn't the real Holy Grail, just a replicated fantasy? While Lin Chia was speculating, his left hand suddenly lightened. When he looked again, that Holy Grail had vanished into thin air as if it had never appeared. 2 seconds later, the boots on his feet also disappeared and his speed slowed down again. They disappeared so quickly. Lin Chia's heart sank. The star coin definitely had the ability to materialize objects he imagined, but the problem was that the duration was far too short. What could he do in just 1 or 2 seconds? Even the boots only lasted for no more than 8 seconds. Wait, why did the Holy Grail, an object he imagined, have a much shorter duration than the boots? Was it because the Holy Grail was of a higher tier than the boots? Lin Chia had no time to think further because Jibble, whom he had managed to shake off for a few seconds, had caught up again. At the same time that star coin, spinning counterclockwise on the back of his hand, was slowing down, seemingly about to fall. Although he hadn't figured out the principles of the star coin, Lin Chia could roughly guess that if the star coin returned to clockwise rotation, the materialization ability would disappear with it. There was no time left. He needed to think of an object that could exert tremendous power in a short time. Countless ideas flashed through Lin Chia's mind. His eyes brightened and he took a deep breath, searching through his memories for a certain object. A moment later, his palm felt heavy again, and a familiar sensation returned to his fingertips. Lin Chia opened his eyes and saw with delight. It was a wooden chopstick. A wooden chopstick imbued with the sword intent of Great Xia's sword Saint Zhou Ping. Lin Chia had used up this chopstick when killing the Thunder Beast in the human circle in Japan. Now, under the power of this star coin, it had reappeared in the world intact. Holding the chopstick and feeling the familiar and magnificent sword intent within, Lin Chia's mind immediately calmed down. He stopped and turned to face the fiery red sky. Scorching flames licked at Lin Chia's deep red cloak like a giant beast. A fire giant clad in red armor broke through the thick clouds and pressed down from the sky. Jibble's facial features were outlined in the flames. He made a grasping motion in the air, and the roaring fire gathered into a giant sword hundreds of meters long, carrying terrifying divine might as it slashed toward Lin Chia's head. Fierce winds howled and yellow sand burned. Under this world-destroying flame sword, the sound of a wooden chopstick breaking came from Lin Chia's palm. Ding! A crisp sword chime echoed across the vast desert. A sword shadow burst from Lin Chia's palm, instantly cutting through the sky and colliding with the flame sword descending from the heavens. In just an instant, Jibble's giant sword was shattered by endless waves of sword energy, turning into scattered flames that drifted down like rain. The sword's cry was resonant, its energy soaring to the sky. Standing in the clouds, the fire god Jibble sensed the approaching aura of the sword law, and his expression changed drastically. Law? What kind of law is this? Having hidden in the king's treasury for 100 years, he naturally wouldn't recognize the sword law that had appeared on the Great Way just over 2 years ago, but he could clearly sense the god-slaying sword intent surging within the sword light. Praise. The sword light pierced through the clouds, instantly creating a large hole in the thick cloud layer. In mid-air, Lin Chia released the sword saint's sword intent, and without looking back, immediately mounted the somersault cloud, and sped away into the distance. He knew clearly in his heart that this sword left by Zhou Ping could kill the Thunder Beast, but definitely not Jibble. After all, the Thunder Beast was just a divine beast with combat power at most reaching the subdivine level, but Jibble was a genuine major god. Trying to eliminate him with just a trace of sword intent left by Zhou Ping was nothing but a fool's dream. Facts proved that Lin Chia's choice was correct. By the time Lin Chia had ridden the somersault cloud far away and the surging sword intent tide in the sky had dissipated, A blood-covered figure slowly walked out from the flames. Jibble's red armor had shattered by more than half, with a horrific sword wound cutting from his shoulder all the way down to his lower abdomen, exposing bone. He looked extremely miserable, with fresh blood dripping from his red armor into the flames, making sizzling sounds. That proxy. Jibble's furious eyes swept over the area below, not finding Lin Chia's figure, his chest heaving violently. He snorted coldly, about to pursue again when an elderly voice reached his ears from afar. The sacrifices collected by Inanna are enough, come back. Jibble frowned, hesitated for a moment, but still stopped and turned to fly toward the crescent moon boat. He's not chasing. After confirming Jibble had turned back, Lin Chia let out a long breath. He looked down at the wooden chopstick broken in two in his hand, confusion appearing in his eyes. It had been at least 20 seconds since he materialized this chopstick, yet it still hadn't disappeared like the Holy Grail, and the boots. Could it be that what determines the duration of these items isn't their tier? The light blue, star coin, spun increasingly slower, finally hovering vertically on the back of Lin Chia's hand, and after a moment began to rotate clockwise again. The broken chopstick in Lin Chia's hand disappeared without a trace the instant the star coin changed direction. So it was indeed because of the clockwise rotation. Lin Chia temporarily put away the star coin, and was about to step forward when a thunderous roar sounded from the sky. Crack! A thick bolt of lightning, as if it had eyes, struck straight down on Lin Chia's head. Caught off guard, dense electric currents surged through every inch of his skin. In less than half a second, Lin Chia's face was charred black and his hair stood on end. Fortunately, his physical strength was extraordinarily remarkable, so even taking a direct lightning strike wouldn't be life-threatening. Someone's trying to kill me. Lin Chia's first reaction was that someone was plotting against him. His mental energy instantly swept the surroundings, but apart from a thundercloud that happened to be floating in the sky, there wasn't a single human figure. No one. Lin Chia searched repeatedly, puzzled. Could it really just be a coincidence? He hesitated for a moment, then continued to step forward. As soon as his foot touched the ground, the sand in front of him rapidly sank in a spiral, swallowing his foot. Quicksand. Lin Chia was stunned and tried to pull his foot out of the quicksand, but the more he struggled, the more he sank. The surrounding sand quickly collapsed, and in the space of a breath, the sand within a radius of 8 or 9 kilometers rapidly flowed with Lin Chia at the center, like a huge desert monster frantically swallowing his body. Lin Chia had never seen or even heard of quicksand on such a large scale. Lin Chia gritted his teeth and drew Hyunbai from his waist, his form slipping into the void, finally escaping from the sea of quicksand. However, as soon as he returned from the void, an even thicker bolt of lightning struck again, precisely hitting his forehead. Lin Chia. In the next 20 minutes, Lin Chia suffered nearly 15 lightning strikes, 6 major quicksand incidents, was caught in 3 divine weapon battles, and while trying to stay away from the chaos, even accidentally cut his finger with the Kusanagi sword. Fortunately, Lin Chia's strength and physical qualities were exceptional. If it had been an ordinary Klein, they would probably have died more than a dozen times by now. If Lin Chia hadn't verified countless times, he would truly suspect someone was secretly trying to harm him. Just plain bad luck. Could it be a side effect of using the star coin? The charred Lin Chia wondered aloud. He took a deep breath and continued walking forward. After some time, his mental perception suddenly detected that crescent moon boat again, along with the 3 Sumerian deities. Lin Chia abruptly stopped. How is this possible? They caught up. Lin Chia quickly looked around. The surrounding environment matched what he had seen before, which meant the 3 Sumerian deities hadn't moved at all. So, amid countless disasters that forced him to change direction, he had somehow made a big circle and returned to where he started? If the previous misfortunes were all side effects of using the star coin, then perhaps this situation of circling back was also a result of the side effects? Lin Chia drew in a sharp breath. Lightning strikes, quicksand, divine weapon battles. All these things combined weren't as deadly as this one instance of getting lost. Fortunately, the 3 Sumerian deities didn't seem to notice Lin Chia's presence. They stood in a triangle formation in the sky, gazing at the crescent moon boat. Lin Chia's peripheral vision caught sight of the towering black city wall in the distance. He immediately drew Zhanbai, and slipped into the void, rushing toward that black wall. Now that the entire treasury was under the control of the three gods, no matter which direction he ran, he probably couldn't escape their grasp. Rather than that, it would be better to hide inside the Black City. After several major battles, the city wall remained intact, which meant it must be a divine artifact that could perhaps conceal his presence. In the sky, as moon god Nana's fingertip gently curved, the crescent moon boat gradually melted, transforming into an overflowing pool of moonlight. The surface of the pool rippled slightly, and vaguely, a figure began to take shape from the bottom of the pool. Nana narrowed his eyes and raised his fingertip. That figure slowly floated up from the moonlight pool, exposed under the dim sky. The moment he saw the figure's face, Lin Chia's heart almost stopped. His eyes were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? At this moment, the figure rising from the moonlight pool was none other than Gilgamesh, wearing a royal robe and crown. The hazy moonlight illuminated Gilgamesh's pale face. His eyes were tightly closed, his expression solemn, with droplets of water falling from the tip of his nose into the moonlight pool, creating ripples. It was a corpse. The corpse of the hero King Gilgamesh, who had ruled the kingdom of Uruk countless ages ago. Perhaps due to the moonlight pool, this corpse had not decayed despite thousands of years, appearing lifelike under the moonlight as if merely asleep. The moment they saw this body, excitement appeared in the eyes of all three Sumerian deities. Gilgamesh, before your death you went to great lengths to hide this treasury, not wanting it to fall into our hands. But you never imagined that after countless ages, your corpse would become the key for us to control this treasury. 5. Supreme, Divine Artifacts. 14. Major God, Divine Artifacts. 42. Subdivine, Divine Artifacts. Your lifelong collection will all become the capital for our Sumerian pantheon's rise. Moon god Nana, admiring this perfect body, raised the Holy Grail in his hand high. The crimson wine swirled against the cup walls, emitting an intoxicating fragrance. His old and deep voice echoed under the dim sky. Gilgamesh, resurrect in flesh. You are city. The dying fire silently danced in the deathly stillness, as the blood-scented cold wind swept over the devastated ruins, making a low moaning sound. In a remote alley, a slight clanging sound arose as a delicate figure carefully lifted a stone slab. After scanning the surroundings to confirm no one was nearby, she supported herself with both hands and climbed out from the cellar. She was a little girl, not very tall, wearing traditional Uruk attire. She turned back and called softly into the cellar. The invader is gone, you can come out now. One by one, figures climbed out from the cellar. These people were mostly elderly women and children. When number 22, wielding the scepter and Holy Grail, went on a killing spree in the city, the men living nearby took up divine artifacts to fight against him, having hidden their families in this cellar beforehand. Now they were the last survivors in this city. The little girl who came out first summoned her courage and walked ahead a bit. Every street, house, and ruin was completely empty, without a single person in sight. Where are Dad and the uncles? A child asked in confusion. The little girl stared at the devastated battlefield and the scattered remnants of clothing everywhere, her face turning pale. It's the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail took them. Tali. An old man interrupted the little girl. He glanced at the child who was barely 4 or 5 years old and silently shook his head at the girl. Looking at those innocent eyes, the little girl fell silent. They were all natives of Ur City, having lived in this treasury for generations. Except for the very young children, everyone else basically knew the types and numbers of divine artifacts in this treasury, including the Holy Grail and scepter. Despite having endured a great battle, not a single corpse or drop of blood remained. It could only mean that after killing those men, the invader had offered their remains as sacrifices to the Holy Grail. Maybe some of them survived. Someone in the crowd suddenly spoke up. Yes, with so many divine artifacts used together, they should have been able to kill the invader, right? Let's search around the city, we might find them. May the three gods bless them. Clinging to their last hope, they searched the entire city along the pitted roads but found not a single person. Just as they were about to give up all hope, a faint clamor could be heard from beyond the city walls. There's sound outside the city. They're still alive. Some of them must still be alive. Quick. Let's go up to the wall and see. Everyone's expressions brightened as they quickly ran up to the city wall, but they all froze when they saw the scene in the distance. Under the dim sky, a figure in white robes descended from the clouds. In the distant desert, dozens of UR City residents were frantically fleeing, as if being chased by demons, their screams and cries echoing through the clouds. The white-robed figure coldly pursued the fleeing survivors. With a wave of her hand, a long spear shot across the sky like a meteor, instantly crashing into the panicking crowd. A terrifying divine power swept through, causing dozens of figures to explode simultaneously, shattering into a rain of blood in the air. The screams and cries abruptly ceased. The white-robed goddess standing in the air lightly curled her fingertips, and the shattered flesh and blood automatically flew up to the crescent-shaped vessel in the sky, merging into the Holy Grail. Tali and the others who witnessed the scene from the city wall turned deathly pale, their legs trembling uncontrollably, their faces filled with terror. An old man's eyes rolled back, nearly fainting on the spot. That's not the invader. Tali stared blankly at the three divine figures converging in the sky. That's the three gods? The god of wisdom and moon, the god of love and beauty, the god of fire and hope. Those really are the three gods. But why are the three gods killing us? Aren't they the deities under our king? Yes, weren't they our king's confidants when he was alive? They knew so many secrets from the Uruk era and understood everything about our king. They even had our king's tokens. They blessed UR City with peace and prosperity for 100 years on behalf of our king. Why would they kill us? The surviving residents of UR City looked on in shock and confusion. These words reached the ears of Lin Chia, who had just hidden himself within the city wall, causing his brows to furrow involuntarily. The three gods. The king's confidants? Earlier in UR City, Lin Chia had heard the term three gods from the residents, but at the time he thought it was just some belief or saying left over from the Uruk era. He never imagined that the three gods they spoke of were actually those three figures in the sky. And the king they mentioned was undoubtedly Gilgamesh. Those three gods were Gilgamesh's confidants? What a joke. Even though Lin Chia wasn't very familiar with the history of the kingdom of Uruk, he clearly knew that Gilgamesh and the Sumerian pantheon were absolute enemies. In fact, Gilgamesh's entire life was spent fighting against the Sumerian gods, and even after death he specifically hid his king's treasury to prevent the Sumerian gods from obtaining it. From the words of the UR City residents, Lin Chia could roughly deduce that they had been deceived by the three gods who had infiltrated 100 years ago. Thinking carefully, it wasn't surprising. The ancestors of UR City were the two great forging families of Uruk, and they had moved into the treasury before Gilgamesh's death, completely isolated from the world for thousands of years. Gilgamesh's natural death, the fall of the kingdom of Uruk. They knew nothing of these events. After thousands of years of reproduction and development, everything from ancient Uruk could only be preserved as ancient cuneiform characters inscribed on clay tablets. When the three gods descended upon the treasury with tokens taken from Gilgamesh's corpse and numerous secrets from thousands of years ago, the people of UR City had no way to verify their identities. They could only be deceived and manipulated. With a few small favors that allowed the residents to experience their benevolence, the three would quickly be worshipped as savior deities. God of wisdom and moon, God of love and beauty, God of fire and hope. They certainly knew how to beautify themselves. The three gods betrayed us, Tali murmured. Look, doesn't that floating corpse resemble the statue at the entrance of the governor's mansion? The king. It's our king Gilgamesh. How did our king's body end up in the hands of the three gods? The surviving residents of UR City exclaimed as they recognized Gilgamesh's appearance. Above the moonlit pool, mysterious light poured out from the Holy Grail, flowing over the surface of Gilgamesh's body. Gilgamesh's tightly closed eyes trembled slightly and after a moment, slowly opened. A pair of unfocused eyes stared vacantly into the void before them. Witnessing Gilgamesh's resurrection firsthand, Lin Chia's heart sank to the bottom. Back in Utopia, the archives had recorded that Gilgamesh's corpse was suspected to have been stolen by Sumerian deities. At the time, Lin Chia thought they had stolen the body just for revenge or to covet his laws, but he never imagined that the Sumerian gods wanted to use the Holy Grail to resurrect Gilgamesh in order to control the king's treasury. The king's treasury was transformed by Gilgamesh's law, and only the law of the king could activate it. This way they had to resurrect Gilgamesh. Of course, what the Sumerian gods needed was only his physical body and his laws. Resurrecting a soul, perhaps the Holy Grail, could indeed accomplish this, but the sacrifices required would be astronomical, and resurrecting Gilgamesh's soul would be all disadvantage and no benefit for the Sumerian gods. As the moon god Nana pointed at Gilgamesh's forehead from midair, strands of hidden moonlight surged out from within his brain, transforming into countless threads flowing to every corner of his body. Gilgamesh's vacant eyes suddenly focused, then filled with an expression of pain. God's mental hospital. Aya. Shrill howls echoed within the golden circle in the courtyard. Waves of invisible energy radiated from the black throne at the center, rippling outward and tearing up the grass in succession. Gilgamesh's bloodshot eyes opened wide in rage, his expression twisted in agony. He frantically smashed his head against the back of the throne, producing bone-chilling dull thuds. Dense cracks spread across the hard throne, and thick blood had nearly dyed the throne red. He's gone mad, gone mad. Gilgamesh has gone insane. Bragi, watching this horrifying scene, was momentarily at a loss. Why is his reaction so extreme all of a sudden? Wasn't he calm just a moment ago? Sun Wukong frowned deeply, his gaze falling on the golden circle nearby. Under Gilgamesh's frenzied release of energy, the golden circle that separated the hospital from the courtyard began to gradually blur. If it shattered completely, the rampaging Gilgamesh's released energy would inevitably harm the many caretakers in the hospital. But he couldn't understand why Gilgamesh would suddenly go berserk to this extent. Could something have happened in the outside world? Sun Wukong muttered. He hesitated for a moment, then turned to look at the void to one side. Closing his eyes tightly for a moment, then forcing them open, he saw the scene that Lin Chia was witnessing in the outside world. Beyond the desolate, broken city, 3 deities stood towering in the clouds. Below them, a familiar figure moved stiffly like a marionette, responding to the light gestures of an old man's fingertips. Sun Wukong was stunned. He turned back to look at Gilgamesh struggling frantically on the throne, his brows furrowed tightly. So that's it, he murmured. 3 major gods, a hero king being manipulated like a puppet, and a king's treasury about to change hands. The situation was more dire than he had imagined. What is it? Monkey, what did you see? Bragi asked anxiously. Sun Wukong didn't speak. After a moment of silence, a cold gleam flashed in his eyes. Bragi, get out, Sun Wukong said gravely. Get out. But. Listen to me, get out. Sun Wukong stepped forward, the breeze stirring his tattered kasaya as he walked straight toward the crumbling black throne and calmly said, If you don't leave now, I can't guarantee you won't get hurt. Bragi was stunned, scratched his head, but then nodded obediently and said, All right, I'll go out first. Remember to call me when everything's settled. As Bragi's figure disappeared from within the golden circle, Sun Wukong narrowed his eyes and walked up to the cracked black throne. Kill you. This king will kill you. Death to those who invade you, Ruck. Kill. 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 The black chains had mostly broken under Gilgamesh's struggles. He had half risen from the shattered throne, like a madman flailing his limbs. That face, filled with insanity and murderous intent, was almost pressed against Sun Wukong's cheek. Sun Wukong looked at Gilgamesh with complex emotions, then reached into his ear and pulled out a golden red staff as heavy as a mountain. He looked up at the void above his head. Sun Wukong treatment progress, 97%. He took a deep breath and reached out to tear apart the last chains binding Gilgamesh. With several crisp explosions, the rampaging Gilgamesh completely broke free from the throne's restraints. Surging divine power poured out from within him, and his turbid, frenzied blood-red eyes stared fixedly at Sun Wukong before him. Kill you. This king will kill you. Gilgamesh's face twisted with murderous intent that had almost solidified. Come then. Sun Wukong gripped his golden cudgel and slammed it heavily onto the courtyard ground. Brilliant golden Buddha light and wild demonic energy, like 2 surging waves, poured out from his body without reservation. The half-tattered kasaya fluttered in the fierce wind. Sun Wukong's eyes seemed to burn like gold, his fighting spirit soaring to the heavens. Sun Wukong narrowed his eyes and spoke word by word. This will be our final battle in this hospital. Above Uruk City, under the control of the moonlight, Gilgamesh's originally stiff and rigid movements gradually became smooth and natural. He raised his hand to his side and the king's scepter automatically left the hand of Inanna, goddess of love and war, returning to his grasp. Scepter in hand, royal robes flowing, the cracked crown emitting a faint glow. If one ignored those vacant, pained eyes, he truly seemed like a living hero king. Moon god Nana, seeing this, nodded with satisfaction. It seems that altering his subconscious in his dead brain beforehand was the right decision, Inanna remarked. Otherwise, even with moonlight as a medium, it would be very difficult to completely control his body based on this body's lifetime instincts. The use of divine domain and laws seems fine too. We should be able to begin. Fire god Bilji looked at Nana beside him. Moon god Nana narrowed his eyes and a gleam of moonlight flashed in his palm. Below, the puppet hero king, as if receiving some command, slowly raised both hands. A ripple of law energy emanated from within him. The magnificent royal robes moved without wind, terrifying divine power surged, and the puppet hero king's lips parted slightly. His hoarse, deep voice clearly reached everyone's ears. Final decree. The moment these words fell, an invisible divine domain radiated from him as its center, sweeping through the king's treasury.